We've all been there. A day at work or at home when it feels like everything's going wrong. There's simply too much to be done. There's too many emergencies, too many surprises, and you begin to wonder, how am I going to get through this? Because what you're feeling is a sense of overwhelm. It feels like a tsunami of demands coming your way. It's not a nice feeling. It can leave us feeling that we're out of control and that there's nothing really helpful that we can do to get out of it. And at the far side of that experience, well, of course, naturally, we just want to move on with our lives and start enjoying them again. No one likes feeling overwhelmed. No one likes feeling stressed. And yet, in this video, I want to explore a bit of a thorny question. How might you be contributing to your own sense of overwhelm? I'm Dr. Richard MacKinnon. I'm a chartered psychologist and coach. And on this channel, I like to share insights from the world of psychology to help you be your best self. So let's start with what is overwhelm. What does it mean to feel overwhelmed? One perspective on this is that we're making a very quick mental snap judgment. Do I have the resources I need to cope with this? And if the answer is no, then we're going to start feeling this familiar overwhelm, this stress. Not very nice. And when we're going through that, it's difficult for us to think clearly, to make good quality decisions. It's challenging to manage our emotions and sometimes our behavior. It can be really difficult to see a way out. So, as much as we can, we want to avoid these situations. But of course, life happens, right? Stuff happens to us, not of our own making. Maybe a colleague goes off sick and you've got to pick up their workload. Maybe there's a series of small challenges in life, but they feel like a massive snowball effect of hassle, grief, and annoyance. And at the same time, some of the things that we regularly do can make it more likely that we'll experience this overwhelm. So what I want to do is not make you feel bad or have a sense of blame or shame, but instead think about what you've actually got control over. I want to walk through some really common root causes of this overwhelm, and I'd like you to think about what you might do differently in the future. The first factor I'd like to explore that contributes to our own overwhelm is our habit of procrastination. Now, we'll all procrastinate from time to time. I almost procrastinated about making this video today, but I was here and so was my camera, so I thought, let's do it. But procrastination can be really problematic because what we're effectively doing is putting off action into the future when we could helpfully deal with it now. And that delay will cause us meaningful problems or meaningful consequences. If we procrastinate habitually, if we're doing it regularly, at some point in the future, there will simply be too many things to be done. And the optimism that comes with procrastination can often be a problem too. We are inherently optimistic that future me will deal with this. Future me will have the motivation and the skills and the bandwidth to get it done. But of course, we also can't tell what's going to happen in the future. The other demands, the other requests, the other emergencies. And so we can see this future car crash happening. What I've procrastinated about and all the other stuff I couldn't imagine happening together. Procrastination is effectively an unsustainable coping strategy. We feel strong emotional responses associated with the task or the activity, and we want to avoid that. And so we push it into the future. And this avoidance gives us relief in the short term. It feels good to say, I'll do that next week. But of course, honest us knows that that's not really solving a problem. In fact, it's creating another problem for the future. And this is why it's not sustainable. Now, this is not the same as rescheduling things because that makes sense, or simply not doing something that has no consequences. But if it's meaningful, if it's important, and you're kicking it into the future, you're increasing the likelihood that at some point you're going to feel overwhelmed. The second reason I'd like to cover off in this video is a lack of prioritization. Now, I've been running a lot of workshops lately all about how to bring the skill of prioritization to work, but also to life more generally. And something I've found myself discussing quite a bit has been, if everything is a priority, then nothing is a priority. If everything is urgent, well then nothing is urgent. If we lose sight of the hierarchy of our priorities, then everything's going to feel like it must be done now. So if we can practice learning how to distinguish between something that's urgent and something that's important, something that's both urgent and important, or something that's not really that important, there's no major consequences if it's not done right now, even though there's a sense of urgency associated with it. If we can learn how to distinguish between these different states, when we're feeling overwhelmed, we can either zoom in on the stuff that must be done and then leave the other stuff till a little bit later. Or when we're feeling overwhelmed, we can look at everything in front of us and simply cherry pick those things that really truly represent the must do now. And of course, if we practice prioritization as an ongoing habit, then we're less likely to feel overwhelmed in the first place, because we can more accurately discriminate between demands, between tasks, between activities, and not see everything as a must do now. The third thing I'd like to cover off in this video, and it's a really common one that comes up in coaching conversations, is the fact that some of us have a tendency to give an automatic yes to every request that's made of us. I'll ask coachees regularly, is your job title meeting attender? And hopefully they see the funny side of that question, because I don't really mean that they have that job title, but if I look at what they do all day, well, then it looks like it is. Why are you automatically saying yes to every meeting request when you've got all of these other things that really ought to get your time and your attention? Why are you automatically saying yes to every request that's made of you? Maybe it's a sense of obligation or wanting to please others. Maybe, a little bit like myself, you'll say yes to new things because they're shiny. Novelty is attractive to some of us. Learning how to put a pause between the request and the response can be super helpful. And this can be as simple as asking for a moment so that you can check your schedule, check your existing commitments, have a think about whether you want to be part of this project or this team, or simply learning how to say, I'm afraid I can't do that today, or I'm unable to do that right now, and discussing when it might be possible. You'd be surprised how positively people respond to that rather than a yes that you ultimately can't fulfill. The fourth and final of these root causes I'd like to explore is a very simple one, but it's one that can have a huge impact on how we look at and think about our work. Ideally, we want to have a list of things that need to be done on any given day that are actionable, executable. We can finish them. We call them tasks. But often we look at our to-do list, or we think about our to-do list, and we're looking at it through the lens of projects, the big ticket things that need to be accomplished. And of course, if you look at your to-do list and it's a list of projects, you are going to feel overwhelmed pretty quickly, because where do you start? So remember, projects are made up of tasks, and on any given day, you will have tasks to complete, not an entire project. If you notice projects on your list, the next thing to do is slice them up into tasks and then complete them in order. So while we all will feel a little bit overwhelmed from time to time, it's important to insert a pause before we respond to it, to recognize this isn't forever, and to avoid blame. We might have contributed to it, but blaming ourselves and feeling guilt is not going to help us get out of this situation. I'm going to share some resources in the notes below this video where you can learn more about how to deal with each of these, and I'd love to hear your questions about it. If you found it useful, why not share this video with someone close to you? Maybe you notice their procrastination, or you notice their overwhelm and their stress. If you found it useful, I'd really like to know. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.